Sorry for being late, guys. I had to take a detour to my yellow void because I, as a biological man, was getting publicly harassed and discriminated for my sex. People were throwing rocks and hammers at me and everything. The feminist agenda has gone too far. Wait a minute. None of that happened. Good morning, everyone, everywhere. Today's men are perhaps more polarized and radicalized than ever. Or are they? No, not really. Have you lived under feudalism? Me neither, but I've read about it. Men are perhaps more visibly and constantly loud about the issues they feel they're being impacted by, though, mostly due to the existence of the internet. But even if we're not literally restarting the witch trials just because a woman rejected us in a bar, there is clearly an issue. An explicit rift is forming between the sexes. This can be objectively, statistically seen in many aspects of life, including education, friendship, and love life. So what went wrong then? One way or another, these disparities exist on different levels for both genders and seem impossible to shake away. What is love? Why are men lonely? And what is the male loneliness epidemic? Unlike in my previous videos, where I've touched upon mainly pretty concrete and easy to grasp subjects such as video game history and movie subtext, love is something you might not expect me to be covering. At least not this early on in my career. But that's all the more reason I should do so, keeping you on your toes and everything. It's more fun that way. Love is a difficult concept to really place your finger on. What is the nature of love exactly? So many things are said and done in the name of love, to the point that the entire concept can easily be diluted in its weight. Clearly, it'd be important to understand it better, but can it be exactly defined? Biologically speaking, love stems from, and is a part of, attraction towards other beings. Humans, generally, are homogamous, meaning that similarities in our backgrounds, personalities, and other traits is a primary driver of what we consider as attractive in someone. What is attraction? Well, aside from the obvious goals of reproduction, it can also refer to the need to have a certain deeper level of connection to another human being, a pet, or even an entire community or mankind as a whole. Depending on how broadly you define love, it can include everything from family and friendship to fellow students and work colleagues. Personally, I see love as most dictionary definitions do, a strong personal affection towards someone or something you hold near, dear, and important to your heart. A friend, a loved one, even a piece of media from your formative years that really captured your imagination, all count. Sorry. Point is, love can be many things. And this malleability is beautiful. It can be used to tell great stories, both fictitious and factual. It can be approached from many different angles. Some stories talk about sudden realizations of love at first sight, while others are slow burns that gradually develop from friendship to attraction. Friendship and attraction. Where's the line? I mean, there are mutuals, friends, best friends, and then what? Girlfriends and boyfriends? Partners? Is that it? At what point does friendship truly become something more? Perhaps it's just something you can feel in the moment, or something that both parties have to agree to for it to be real. This obscurity, while often a source for excitement, has also simultaneously been at least a partial culprit of many broken hearts. Indeed, we have to concede that every once in a while, the show of affection goes too far. The people who do so, accidentally or otherwise, are generally men. They might blame themselves or an overly feminist society or something else, but in any case, most of them believe there exists something called the male loneliness epidemic. Although I absolutely recognize the often troublesome relationship dynamics between all genders and sexualities, I don't feel like I can talk for all of these groups, even as a filthy agender pansexual. So, for the sake of brevity and integrity, in this video I'll only focus on the most simplified types of man and woman relationships that I actually have experience with. And to be frank, abusive queer people aren't the issue. I mean, they are an issue, don't get me wrong, but they are not the issue, you know? To put it simpler, the straight men in our society need an earnest emotional talk every once in a while. In the past few decades, people all over the world have been facing a staggering decrease in the average amount of friends they have. This is true for everyone, but is particularly prevalent in men. According to this terribly unclear graph that was the only one I could really find on the topic, 10% of women reported having 0 close friends, while a whopping 15% of men said the same. This is up by 12 points from the 3% it was at just 3 decades ago. Focusing further on men, they are also disproportionately more likely to report that they receive little to no emotional support, can't find a romantic partner, feel like they have no sense of purpose, and men are consistently at a much higher risk of suicide. Women actually report having thoughts related to suicide at a much higher rate, but men are more likely to carry through with them without actually talking about it to anyone. Even in my home country of Finland, a terrifying 3/4 of all suicides are committed solely by men. Among other issues that we will get into later, the male loneliness epidemic consists of these aforementioned problems. Having no friends, no social safety net, feeling like you have no future prospects or things to look forward to in life, being alienated from society and hiding in online chat rooms, they are all real. Male loneliness, the friendship recession, all of it is still, statistically, real. And they lead to real-world problems. Unstable men are still often permitted into positions of power that can mess with the lives of millions of people below them. It hardly comes as a surprise to anyone, then, that men are significantly more likely to become politically radicalized, commit domestic violence, and perform acts of terror like school shootings. Male loneliness is real. Its alarming consequences are as well. But is that loneliness caused due to the reasons that online alpha male types claim it is? We'll get there. No. Now we get to the uglier side of the subject. Yes, now, the things I mentioned weren't even the worst part yet. The worst part is that this epidemic, which I don't think you should call it by, is needlessly pathologizing and not really a problem of contagion, is actually, if anything, spread further and worsened by the very people who make a career out of scapegoating male loneliness to their own ends. This is a sincere problem that is literally visible on a graph at a generational scale, yet the people who are talking about it the loudest are, whether on purpose or not, making it appear ridiculous and unimportant by tying it to all of this other toxic macho crap. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Once again, you have, undoubtedly, heard this term being used mainly by men, often called incels or chuds or hikikomori. They go by many names, each of which have slightly different definitions, but they're all antisocial, mostly male outcasts that fashion themselves as outside of the system or the matrix, understanding something that the rest of society doesn't. In reality, they have usually suffered stuff like getting fired, expelled from school, or some other kind of disappointment in life that estranged them in this way. Most importantly to this video's subject, it's often related to heartbreak and rejection, the lack of female attention. 14-year-olds getting turned to radical beliefs because of one bad experience with a girl, young men getting turned down by multiple women, or even recently divorced middle-aged men seeking solace from like-minded individuals in a group chat. Although these guys' reactions and radicalization is, from a certain point of view, comprehensible, they are clearly not justifiable. If you have a bad experience with a girl or 2 or 20, that does not excuse your own creepy behavior. You may have had some minor or some really huge issues in your relationship. Maybe you were led on to feel a certain way about an ultimately one-sided romance. Maybe you were cheated on, or guilt-tripped to insane lengths, or left in the dark for 9 months while your partner flirted with at least 4 other guys, said that everything is fine and they just need some space for a while, despite already being with someone else that they were also lying to. Maybe even one single person did all of those things to you. But, whatever the individual case may have been for you, that does not give you an excuse to be a shitty person or devolve into nihilism. Plenty of people face very rough interpersonal hardship every day and don't make it out to be a problem with the entire opposite gender. No one is saying these kinds of situations are easy. Whether you were with someone for 3.5 years, a few weeks, or even if you were always just friends, they can leave you an emotional wreck. Grief and recovery isn't a competition, and everyone has their own way of getting through it. You just have to recognize if and when some of those ways are more harmful than helpful to you. Treating every single potential romantic interest as the caricature that the manosphere wants you to think all modern women are like is only helping to perpetuate your own terrible feeling and sense of self. Feminism, despite its arguably outdated and now misleading naming, is the belief that all people are to be treated equally and not to be discriminated on the basis of sex. The word isn't a suggestion of female supremacy, but a remnant of the times when women had significantly less rights than men already had. You could definitely argue they still aren't fully equal, but that's besides my point. Think about who benefits when you hold prejudiced views towards women. The women don't, but you certainly don't either. The wider systems in place in our society require division and friction between equal groups, so that we aren't attentive enough to look up at the system itself. Which brings us to the patriarchy. Oftentimes, modern men are faced with a binary choice: be a feminist, in other words, a normal person, or become part of upholding patriarchy. To a man who has been led to believe an ideology defending equal rights is somehow hateful and flawed, the choice is clear: uphold the system that claims to fix all of your problems. But does it really do so? No. As the name suggests, the patriarchy is a form of hierarchy that places men at the top. And in terms of men, specifically the conservative ideal of physically dominant, emotionally stoic meat pillars that bygone ideologies think are male perfection manifest. It's of utmost importance for the proponents of the patriarchy that you are an unbroken leader of a man who can never waver in his emotions, thoughts or opinions. You can't show any signs of weakness. You must be absolutely perfect. Unfortunately, perfection doesn't really exist, as we already learned last year, and the institution of patriarchy itself is very much imperfect indeed. One could even say it's fundamentally flawed. You see, the patriarchy as an ideology was created and is upheld and maintained by men for the exclusive benefit of men. The issue is, when you zoom out a little bit, you come to the troubling realization that not every person on Earth is a man. I know, it sucks. There's more than one gender. In fact, there's at least 3. The patriarchy presents itself in many forms and embeds itself in nearly every facet of our lives, almost inconspicuously, but only almost. You just have to know where to look. When you picture the word, you're likely thinking about pasty old men as presidents and other powerful decision makers around the globe, with women being noticeably absent from most positions of leadership. This is certainly part of it, but leaders couldn't manage that kind of control alone from the top down. They need lackeys, jesters you could say, that distract the rest of us while the men in positions of power do what they want. These clowns may pretend to be in control or simply claim not to care that they're clearly compromised, yet they are, nonetheless. Toxic figures like Andrew Tate or Sneeko come to mind.
Fuck the woman! Fuck the woman! What? What have I done?
These are people who have built their entire careers off blaming modern women for all of society's ills, with Tate specifically even selling men scam courses with worthless advice that is supposed to help you get it on with women, when their actual purpose is just for you to drop a monthly deposit of $500 in his bank account. Cha-ching! In the United States, from which a good portion of the world gets its sources of news and entertainment, there exists an entire political industrial complex to trick the populace, especially emotional young men, to vote against their interests. Guys like Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh are all failed former actors, writers and radio hosts that realized their own material wasn't quite good enough for print.
Well, let me say, I've yet to know of too many conservatives, which is where you put yourself, who are funny. I mean, it has to do with a humor that is transferable to everyday living.
So they became mouthpieces for other, more powerful men instead. Interestingly, a lot of these puppets have themselves at least attempted to be productive to society at some point, but they fell to the fringes when they couldn't grow beyond their narrow worldview and now make it everyone else's problem. Take as an example, Ben Shapiro, and the right-wing media company he started. It is bankrolled by the Wilkes brothers, a family enterprise that profits through pollutants like gas and oil production. They are also behind the funding of PragerU, a fake university that spouts similar anti-feminist jargon, as well as the political campaigns of people like Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. As for Steven Crowder, he's hopped between so many different conservative outlets funded by the exact same group of billionaires that it's hard to even keep track. My point is, None of these people actually believe what they say, and they play defense for rich people who would very much love to keep their planet-eroding practices off the headlines. Thank you very much. Even in my own country, the conservative parties love to obfuscate their lack of any concrete ideas or plans by whipping out different poker cards of discrimination like it's Ballatro. Even a gay conservative male politician, someone you'd expect to not only be intimately familiar with men's mental health problems but also care about how to solve them, falls flat on his own messaging when it's painfully obvious he has no solutions to offer, and is only using this issue to gain a voter base he'll inevitably disappoint with zero action. Poor Sebastian, at 30 years old, unironically tweeting the hashtag #MaleHateGate and expecting to be taken seriously. Huh. Wonder why that didn't take off. And when pressed on the fact that his ideas are so unpopular he needs to buy ad space on Twitter, and that his own bigoted party is likely going to betray him, a gay man, the first chance they get... Oof. How's that for woke censorship? None of these men are outside of the matrix, and they certainly don't actually care for men's mental health. Quite the contrary. Even with no true financial incentive, these guys will retreat to their sunk cost fallacy of fellating oil barons and lobbying groups to such a degree that Matt Walsh literally says therapy for men is probably useless. And even if it wasn't, you shouldn't attend it if your therapist is a woman. And yet, a problem persists, whether or not these guys take it seriously, or have any real answers on how to fix it. So let's check out what those answers could look like. The patriarchy is a fascinating social construct. On one hand, millions of people believe, or at least subconsciously assume, that it's absolutely necessary to maintain some kind of imagined gendered order in society, yet it's paradoxically incredibly fragile and constantly eating its own tail. As it happens, this applies to many traditional ideologies, but that's a topic for another video. If we just focus on these traditional values of masculinity and femininity for now, we can quickly recognize this isn't even benefiting the men it supposedly upholds in such high regard. Earlier in the video, we spent a lot of time discussing the tragic consequences of male loneliness, but we never fully unpacked where it comes from. Yes, the internet and its cyber-balkanizing effects are partially responsible for this, but aside from the convenience, what has pushed young men to this dead-end solution in the first place? From what I could gather, it's the very traits the patriarchy claims as its strongest values. While I said earlier that the patriarchy is man-made, that isn't quite the full picture. Some, although not all of it, is rooted in the true biological origins of humans as a species, and is still found in many species in the present. Its rigid gender structures may have been beneficial guiding principles to early humans who lacked skills like sophisticated communication, planning for the future, and the accelerated rate of social evolution that we have now, but it's less justifiable as a necessary structure for today's society. Traditionalist gender theories like the patriarchy argue that each side of the coin has very distinct roles to fulfill in life, even when that's not really the case anymore. Feminist movements across millennia recognized early on that tasks like working, cooking, protecting, and childcare don't make much sense to arbitrarily separate based on the contents of your pants. So, as women continued slowly gaining the same rights and roles as men did, men never evolved their worldview alongside this change. Men lost the monopoly on providing for their family and never found a new purpose to call their own. Left floating in the wind, young men are now searching for their place in a world that has moved on without them, which I think is the explanation to why men gravitate so easily to these bad role models. We don't need a progressive Joe Rogan or Andrew Tate, we just have to resolve the societal issues that make them attractive in the first place. Rhetorically, not physically, of course. Our current global economic model, of course, doesn't exactly help. When you're expected to live up to self-destructively impossible standards, both by your male peers and the cost of living crisis, one might skip out on socializing or seeking mental health advice. If you're a person who really cares about the fertility rate of your country, you should realize that not being able to afford a house for yourself, let alone to raise a family, is probably more to blame than women being busy at work. When women finally entered the workforce, this didn't mean that families suddenly doubled their net income. Our selfish, top-centered economic model adapted to this development by requiring double income from all families, and we went right back to square one. The solution isn't to force women back into housekeeping roles and let men do all the work, but to reduce the workload of both sexes by dismantling the gears that keep such a failing machine spinning us around in the first place. The patriarchy is a facade, made to keep you complacent and to trust higher authority not just between men and women, but between men and even more powerful men. Systemic solutions are clearly required to fix problems of this magnitude. Don't blame yourself, the individual, if this feels really hard, because it is. But the solutions are identifiable and actionable, assuming our elected officials care enough. Not only should corporations be way more regulated and our safety nets be expanded, but we should also improve people's media literacy to reduce our susceptibility to do-nothing populist leaders that put us in this situation in the first place, and grifters trying to manipulate you to oppose other people in the same tax bracket as you. There are things you can do on a more personal level, though. If you're a man, consider re-evaluating what is fair to expect from you. Traditionally, men aren't seen as brotherly support groups the same way as women see each other, which is a shame. More likely than not, there is at least one other guy you know or are friends with who is having the same thoughts as you are and would love not to be alone with them. Talk to him about your emotions, no matter how stupid and gay that may feel at first. If you're having more serious issues, consider at least calling for a consultation about therapy, even if this creep doesn't believe in it. It takes very little time and may be relatively cheap or even free, depending on where you live. It's a small first step, but still an important one. Look, even I did it! And not even just for this video, but because I actually needed it. I practice what I preach. A great resource that helped me a lot in researching for this video was a brief essay by Some More News called Are Men Okay? I recommend watching it in its entirety, but at the end, spoiler alert, news guy Cody Johnston sums up the solution for lonely men by simply saying,
be friends with a human woman that you like as a person.
And he's right. You should. And most guys that fall in the rabbit hole of toxic masculinity assume that you can't be casual friends with girls, and that it always has to inevitably lead to a relationship. But it doesn't. It doesn't have to lead to that at all. If you view women as trophies to obtain instead of as people to meet, not only will you never find one for yourself, but you might just miss out on a ton of genuinely awesome people. Related to this, dating apps can also be surprisingly useful at helping you to just meet new people. They may not be perfect for that, but if you're already using one, consider using it just to see what kinds of women you can be friends with. As a general rule of thumb, serious relationships should always begin from the common ground of friendly respect, but that's just my opinion. However, if you're not yet using a dating app and recognize that you need help, consider going to therapy before you transfer that workload onto someone you met online. They'll thank you. Trust me. Cool? Cool. Finally, some advice for women. Not much though, as I don't want to mansplain, or personsplain, I guess. And you're already doing everything perfectly anyway. Don't even worry about it. However, I want to take a moment to point out that tackling the issue of male loneliness together lifts all boats. But I'm a woman, why should I give a shit about whether or not men are lonely? They've made their bed, now they should sleep in it alone. Is an impulse I've often heard echoed around this conversation, and it's absolutely understandable. However, male loneliness is a problem that affects literally everything and everyone, including you. This doesn't necessarily require much to do on your end, but just recognize that this problem does exist, and you should maybe try and educate the men in your life who are wrong about it, if they seem even somewhat approachable on the subject. This topic has been made so toxic to even discuss in a purely analytical way that several people I told about this video idea started immediately rolling their eyes. And the thing is, I can't really judge them. When the only times you hear about male loneliness are from faces like these, you become desensitized to it as a genuine demographical issue. These guys have hijacked a discussion about mental health that they have no interest in actually having in good faith, and have drowned out the voices of creators who could actually help men improve their self-image. Now get these mugs out of my video! You don't have to, and can't, be perfect. I'm certainly not. Messing up every once in a while is human nature, but it's up to us guys to learn the right lessons from those mistakes, and if they are repeated, at least make them smaller. I, for one, am always late, and constantly over-promising and over-explaining myself every chance I get. Every single video I've made so far has fallen very short of their planned release dates, yet slowly and surely, I'm getting better. You can too. And you hopefully won't need a YouTube channel to cope with your life feeling empty. Last year, I remember hearing someone say about life, it doesn't get easier, just different. That person isn't in my life anymore. But their words, evidently, are. I'm a hopeless optimist, and I definitely do not expect everyone to be able to give the benefit of the doubt or dish out the endless idolization of their friends and loved ones that I do on the daily, but I feel like you can learn a lot from your past encounters, even if you're not a hope-posting joy pillar like me. Why did I write it like that? We are only in this world for so long. Even if you look at the subject of heartbreak with masculine, cold, hard logic, you very quickly realize that there's no other way out of it but by accepting the mistakes you or your former partner made and moving on. You can't modify our past and can only affect what is in front of us in the future. I'm sometimes asked if I would travel back in time to change an outcome I was badly hurt by, and I always stubbornly say that I wouldn't change a thing about where I've ended up. It's weird. No matter how much time flies by or how badly I was hurt, I can't help but feel empathy for the people in my life who have wronged me. Maybe it's flawed, naive, or even privileged of me to do so, but that's just how my weird brain works. I have forgiven virtually everything I've ever suffered in the hands of others, no matter how transformatively egregious their conduct was. And I'm not talking about genuine crimes here, don't get me wrong, I'm simply referring to decisions unfair to me, made by people while in the heat of passion. Because at the end of the day, they're just that. People, too. As the saying goes, all is fair in love and war. You can be hurt, offended, broken, but it's not illegal to be a thoughtless person. The best you can do is care for yourself and hope they won't be like that forever. I want to leave you with a quote, paraphrased from one of my formerly most trusted friends, written many years ago. No matter how badly they burned me, their primordial words have stayed with me as a source of inspiration. They speak to what we have tackled here today and show how even the people you felt most betrayed by have, in the end, had something of value to offer, even if only a very long time ago. And I quote, "I've started to think that maybe this life can be more beautiful if you just let go of the past. It can be difficult and make you feel bad at first, yet ultimately, that may even be a good thing. I feel like I've wallowed too much in the past, and I should start focusing on this moment, the present, and not on something that I did, said, heard, or saw back when I was younger. I just have to hope those ghosts of the past don't start popping back up again." Good night, everyone, everywhere.
Ow!